What is up, guys, and welcome back to episode 9 of All About Millennials podcast, man. It is crazy. For those that don't know, or might have been living under the rock the last 2 months, my name's Donaze, and I am joined today by my goofball co-host, Kaehla Maurer. What is up?
Hi!
Man, this has been 2 months in, and wow, I still can't believe we did it.
I can't believe we did it, and now it's almost time for things to open up. Maybe will we ever open up? But you know what? This is gonna keep going,
Fingers
guys.
crossed. Well,
the podcast is just gonna keep growing.
The podcast is gonna keep growing regardless. And if you're talking about a certain situation, LA is possibly opening up on the dumbest day ever, the 4th of July. So,
hey,
that's either here nor there. That's going to be happy for me, and that's not what we're here to talk about. What we are here to talk about, though, is a little bit of a follow-up for those that tuned in last week on our discussion on how to define and deal with anxiety. And we touched on a couple of things when it came to racism. So with me being the African American with a bit of that Native American mix, and then Kaehla,
Filipino and white.
Yeah, we deal with this a lot. And so today we're defining not only cultural appropriation versus appreciation, but also discussing microaggressions that have happened and assumptions within our own cultures that we've had to deal with throughout our lives. So with that being said, ready?
Let's do it.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, the definition of cultural appropriation to even define this. And that's just taking anything that takes something from one culture and then just repurposing it for their own gain without the context in respect to the source material. And I think just having that knowledge when it even comes to dance is very perfect to understanding, like, okay, this is what it goes through, or this is what it is.
So for people that don't know, and I kind of was a little on the fence with my understanding of the definition, with an example of cultural appropriation and where it might get muddled, I feel like we could look towards, like you said, dance uses a lot of cultures and a lot of like music videos especially will bring in other cultures. And at what point are they appreciating that culture or crossing the line? Like, I could name a couple of artists that maybe cross the line a little bit.
Unless you want to get in a Twitter war without me in it and not on this account, don't.
I think people get an idea of what we're talking about without going into detail.
Yeah. And the whole purpose of that, and to go back to what you're saying, is simply when it comes to even dance or the entertainment industry, just like going, oh, I'm going to do X like performance. So say, for instance, a drama, but in turn, it's a comedy. Like the jokes in the script is pretty much funny and you're like, wait, what? Or something with, I think Ready Player One is a decent example of this, even though it felt more new age and inside the game, but the amount of 80s and 90s references. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine that I was staying with at the time, and when it was out in Orlando, while I was in Orlando, and he even said like the source material, granted because of licensing and copyright, was totally different than the movie.
I didn't see it, so I have no say on Ready Player One, but I could totally see where a lot of media strays from the original intention.
Yeah, and I think when books are converted to movie or TV and vice versa, you really get to see that a lot. And it's weird to say like, oh, stuff's not the same from one medium to another. But the biggest issue with having one medium going to another, you ignore part of that. So the fan base that had been diehard dedicated to that source material, like even Harry Potter, can lose like half of the context that's in the movies just for a rating and financial gain. And it's like weird.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that I really find uh complex is, now that we're talking about like works of art with a specific cultural point of view, it's like, it's interesting how when, let's say, a Disney movie is focusing on like Hawaiian culture, like Moana or Lilo and Stitch, you expect the people in it to be Hawaiian. Or what, I mean, I guess this would be more towards like live action stuff because those are cartoons, you can't really tell. But then it's interesting how in like theater, like Broadway, people a lot of the times can be any race and represent whatever character. Maybe because I don't know. It's weird. It's a big deal for someone to misrepresent in film.
Well, you did bring it up, and it sparked an idea on my head with a couple of videos I was watching to really do my homework on this topic. And it's more so just because we're talking about theater, I'm thinking blackface.
Yeah, that's a huge
Yeah.
deal too.
Yeah, and honestly, people that didn't understand like the significance that still do it today, and I'm like, bruh, and why I personally I don't care for mimes just because it could easily, granted, I don't mind the style, I just don't mind the face paint and the makeup because it gets to where people could easily like, oh, I just want to paint my face a mime, but not think about it, and then it could easily be misconstrued as a form of slavery and just quote unquote Jim Crow and all that.
Yeah, that's so crazy. It's crazy how, I mean, it's something that I definitely want more representation of my culture, and yet we're trying to live in an age where we're trying to like diffuse racism. So it's almost like a catch-22 in my mind, because we want to diffuse it, like say everyone's equal, but then at the same time it's like, if everyone's equal, why are we trying to prove that we're equal?
Yeah, I think we assume a lot today, back in the day to now. It's just that we assume that everything's okay, that what we do or what's in the media is perfect or anything. And I think the biggest thing when you said music, I was thinking about O Town Road, and I'm like, bruh, this isn't rap. Like that whole country rap, it can be done if
Right.
the source material is respected, like the source genres. Like over and over again with Nelly and Tim McGraw, that was respected and just very well done to me. But you get something like O Town Road, you're like, wait, what is this? What satire?
I think, I mean, I don't know much
So,
about his background, but I think it was well, I see what you're saying. I think it was well received in the country community, though. Well, maybe not completely, but definitely by, huge advocates of country. And
right.
and you definitely do have to have an appreciation of both, like, it's almost like all these country singers are trying to rap now. They really are, in some shape or form, but it's still country, but it's almost like they're taking one genre and they're mixing it with another genre, so it's basically its own sort of pop music in a way, as opposed to one genre or the other. And I think that's what Little Nas X was trying to do, was kind of blend two genres, as opposed to trying to, like, pretend to be something that he's not. Maybe I feel like I don't know anything about his background, but I I think that has to do with where he came from.
Right.
That song. Uh,
And just having Billy Ray on there and having those throwbacks is just like cool.
yeah,
And before anybody thinks that I'm just bashing on any other thing but myself, any other culture, any other style of music, it's been going on since.
yeah,
Here's another example. Gold Digger. Ray Charles was not in that video, but you had one of his classics as pretty much the ballad, and what everybody remembers from that song is, I'm not even gonna sing it to keep monetization on this video, but yeah, it's like the ad libs from Ray Charles were what everybody remembers. So having that little bit, but still like staying true to it and like that style and knowing the culture versus just going out here and I would even say fusing something
hmm
and trying to have country and rap, but basically call it pop is like, wait, what the?
yeah. I call it.
So that to me is just like
I think
off putting.
genres are very muddled now. There's a lot of gray area, but I just called it pop because it's what is pop even nowadays. It's that is something on the pop stations. It's like most pop is actually a blending of different genres at this point. I
Take
think
me to
that's what
next.
pop means, I guess.
Yeah.
Or
Take
really
me back. Take me back to the late 90s and early 2000s right now, since we are talking about music, we are talking about film, and we are talking about genres within both. And the
yeah,
reason I say that, because the lines were a lot cleaner, a lot more like people had, you knew, okay, if this was that, if that was that, if that was that. Now it's
right.
just so muddied, like you're saying, it's weird. So you can't even like, is that one thing? Is that the other? Can we advertise it as one? Can we advertise? Do we need to
Right.
advertise it as something else?
But do you think that's a product of us trying to blend our cultures together and like not paint ourselves in a box, not put ourselves in one genre or the other or one
I think it is
Like
a
stay in
product
your
of that.
lane, you're this person
Oh yeah, I think it
or
is
this
because we're
culture.
all just wanting to be more accepting and accepted now versus the 90s.
Hmm.
And that's where it is that double-edged sword. Yes, we can be a lot more accepting, a lot more accepted, but if you're not really respecting other cultures and other walks of life, then it's kind of like, okay, you can have all that, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Well, I think when it comes down to it, there's a lot of controversy with people blending, well, not even blending cultures. I don't want to even, not even just bringing like a different genre into their song, but like I did makeup the other day based off of Katy Perry, and when I looked up appreciation, cultural appropriation, the exact like music video that I was like looking at earlier in the week was the one that showed up first with cultural appropriation. And so it's like, what is your, I'm going to ask, what is your take on that? Like, as where do people draw the line as far as appreciating a culture versus not realizing they might be offensive? What do they have to have in order for people to say, I'm okay with this versus like, you're hurting my feelings?
The and this goes to another point that I wanted to make in this section of being a culture vulture, and essentially just, are you really, what are you gaining from this? Are you really just in it to help and grow and not just wanting to gain anything? Or are you wanting to just, oh hey, I'm only in it for the money and I'm just going to rip off this top 10 thing, this top 10 culture that may or may not have anything to do with my own, and just model my style off of that?
Well, and the artist doesn't always choose. Maybe they do, but they don't always choose what the, like if there's a story behind a song, they're not necessarily making the story about another culture, but in the music video, the story becomes that culture too, I guess, as a metaphor for whatever they're saying in the song. So at
Well,
that point, would you call it cultural appropriation?
oh man. Well, I'd say yes on one account, and this is so weird that I'm even saying it like this. And that's more on people and their knowledge and learn. And this will be a theme throughout this entire episode. And I love the fact that I thought of this random topic like in the middle of last week's episode. But learning and gaining the knowledge of another culture, ra- rather than just, oh hey, I'm gonna rip off aspects of this other culture that's different than mine, this other walk of life that is different than mine,
Hmm.
and then at the end of the day, money.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like they're not they're not doing it for the intention of the culture. It's, well, I think of like, see, I love to think about music because that's my realm of diffusing, or I mean just like mixing cultures. And I think about like songs that are made for okay, so like a movie, Slumdog Millionaire.
Ooh.
It's an American movie based on the Indian culture. It's not a Bollywood film per se, but it's a Bollywood type of film. So when they made songs for the film, it was basically what I just said. It's an American song with like an Indian theme to it, rather than like just picking it totally, the whole thing is about India versus like picking up bits of Indian culture and including it in your song.
True that. And man, whew, I just think that's a lot. And one of the biggest concerns that I have is just understanding. And it's more so when you gaining the knowledge, it's up to not just the, because companies are going to want to do what's best for them to make the bottom line. Like at the end of the day, like a production company, a label, like granted, still want to have that respect, not to have that bad rep, but it's more so what's the bottom line? How much money are they making? Or are they going to make the biggest name buzz on social media? If the answer is no, then they're not going to do it. But if the answer is yes, but we got to kind of ruffle a few feathers and almost become the anti-hero in the situation, then ends justify the means in their eyes. But it's up to the artist to say, hey, either educate myself to really understand this role, understand like this life, or like just go out there and make a mock of it and it doesn't come off as natural. Like that's the biggest thing I think when it comes to these films like are out there. It's more so up to us as artists to educate ourselves and really be familiar. And yes, it does have a little bit of gain in that. However, are we really understanding what we are doing? Because if we're not, it's going to come off as fake. And that's when the insult from one culture to another comes in. And with that being said, I'm going to take it to break real quick. But when we come back, we all know of microaggressions. And everybody and their mom, myself, Kaehla, we're just going to talk about like just common misconceptions, common assumptions within our own cultures that we've really had to grow up with. And until then, see you in 5.
Hey, all you millennials and millennial lovers. I have discovered some new products for all of us to take care of our skin and our beauty, our well-being during these times when we can't go to the store so easily. It's Pharmacy Cosmetics, and they make stuff for kids. They make stuff for women, men, everybody. And I love to use the Calendula Balsam, which is a product that kind of just soaks into your skin when you put it on and keeps you moisturized for hours. So if you're interested in that, you can go to pharmacyus.com/Kaehla Maurer, FARMASIUS.com/KAEHLAMAURER.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And this has been one crazy, tense, but crazy episode of All About Millennials, and today's topic of racism. And first half, crazy discussion over cultural appropriation and appreciation, which if you are just tuning in, go back, watch this episode, listen to this episode over again. You really are missing out. But for this half, Kaehla and I just wanted to talk over and touch on some crazy assumptions and microaggressions that have happened in our eyes, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And I think to sum it up for anybody that's just tuning in, we were so tense because it is so hard to talk about such a touchy subject, and you don't want to offend anybody, definitely, but you also want to like have an understanding of what racism really is and what it entails and what isn't included in racism. And so all of this is just us having a debate, not arguing, just having a great debate and kind of opening up questions for people to just think about these things. So anyway, I'll let you start. I'm gonna flip mine on its head and kind of play my own devil's advocate. So I'll start with you.
oh man. But I think the biggest one was, even being from the Midwest and Indiana specifically, is that I knew the Jacksons. Black guy, Indiana. I know and am a fan of Michael Jackson. Half of that is right. And yeah, I am was a fan of Michael. Am I? That's a gray line that for another day. Am I a fan of the entire family? Yes, that's a gray line for another day. Do I know them just because I'm from Indiana? No. I have friends that even grew up in Gary that don't know the Jacksons. But yeah,
But people would ask you,
yes. And
like your opener, as soon as you say you're from Indiana, they go, "Oh, so you know the Jacksons?"
that's a common misconception. And then also, like, oh, you must be an athlete. You're black. You're an athlete. Dude, like outside of dancing, like my spinal cord, because all the surgeries I have, is so bad to where I do not trust myself like upside down at all, even doing a cartwheel.
Wow.
Yeah, so not an athlete, just a dancer. Yes, dancing is athletic, and the quote unquote American form of sports and athletics, that's not me. So stick that. And then, yeah, do I talk a certain way? I don't know. But it's like my family, like my roots are in South Carolina. I grew up in Indiana with my mother and my family. So yeah, it's like I do have a little bit of a Southern accent mixed with a Midwest accent, and I just try and do it. But at the end of the day, I still try and have that just respect and just try and get to stuff on time and own up. Yes, it's harder for uh, people of color, so self and Kaehla included, to get gigs. I think it's a bit easier in this industry for ladies than it is guys, because like I hardly see gigs out there outside of maybe 2 months a year or maybe 2 or 3 shows a season that really are recruiting African American background actors and actors. And is that discouraging? Yeah, but make your own and support your own, you know?
Yeah, I totally get that. I so for one, I'm wearing, I didn't even realize it. I'm wearing like a tiger shirt, and it's not Tiger King. So before we get into that, it's not Tiger King,
I can tell
but
it's not, by the way, for
but
anybody listening.
it is a ninja shirt, like a like it's from a like a karate movie, not ninja. See, look, there I go. Okay, this is leading into my own point. So here's the thing though, but it's from a karate movie actually. Um, but the thing is, and this crossed my mind when we were discussing the first topic, and I didn't want to get into it because this goes into personal stories, which we are waiting to do. But growing up, my mom would put us in all these different outfits, a lot of the time Chinese, and we just looked cute, like we just wore them. We're like, I mean, this is kind of lame because like whatever, but like I guess we'll wear them because our mom wants us to wear them. But like it's one of those outfits where if you were white and you just wanted to buy this outfit, someone could be like, that's totally racist. Why are you wearing that? Like the silk, the button down. My mom would put chopsticks in our hair, like that sort of thing. And so it's like I always grew up like my sister always looked Asian and I didn't. So I always grew up like everyone just assumed I was white unless they had more knowledge of other cultures and they could kind of tell in my features that I wasn't white. And so I would do things without thinking about it that could have been cultural appropriation. Like when I say things, people don't realize, where I come from, and they're like, Kaehla, you shouldn't say that. I'm like, but it's true. I'm like it's like the whole stereotype, since we're talking about stereotypes, it's like the stereotypes of being a bad driver. I'm like, oh yeah, like, I'm a bad driver because I'm a woman and I'm Asian. And it's like, that could be totally hurtful to someone, but I'm like, at what point are you crossing a line because you're doing comedy and you're talking about yourself, but people don't realize that you're being true, you know? It's
I
it's rough.
Yeah, I know. And honestly, you said something that really sparked a very crazy and very vivid memory in my mind. And that is, have you ever, because this has happened to me too, have you ever been associated, conflicted, or confused as a gang member or a triad member just by something you wore outside your house? Because it's happened to me to where I've been affiliated as a gang member by just some random person for showing
Right.
up without a belt and either a football or basketball jersey randomly.
Right. I never have because I am a girl, I think, and I'm white and I sound preppy. And I lived in the I lived in the ghetto, like the outskirts of the ghetto. I went to church in the ghetto. I played soccer in the ghetto. Like, so on my bus, everybody was kind of protecting me, like, make sure you don't go to the mall in these colors and like whatever. And
Oh
I was,
no.
yeah, and I was always like, shoot, like I can't, like, even though I don't think I would have been suspected ever, I I did worry about those things, like especially like if I'm hanging out with them, I have to watch what colors they're wearing or something, because they could be mistaken or something. And also, with that being said, it's like the second point I wanted to bring up about myself is we get those microaggressions against ourselves, and I've touched on it in previous episodes, but also I can see where I've crossed the line too. And to me, everybody has kind of accepted it, and it could totally be racist because I was always the girl on the dance floor who would get in a freestyle dance off with whoever's on the dance floor. So I learned how to like pop and like I learned how to do the Dougie and stuff like that with my friends. So when I would go among strangers who don't know me, they could totally take, me trying to challenge them as like an insult or something, where I'm like, oh, but this is what I do. Or like my mom, because we lived in Central Florida, uh my mom took us to the Nora Zil Hurston Festival. She's
Mhm.
a famous writer, and she came from basically Orlando, Eatonville. So it's not like an area where I frequent, to use that word, but we did go to the festival, and it was so cool, whatever. And my friend and I, because we're multicultural and we hang out with any culture, whatever, we felt like we just fit in, and we're just like jumping on the dance floor with everybody, like whatever, not ashamed. And it's like, it's kind of like, because we're, in my eyes, because we're around it, it's part of what we grew up in, we're just accepted into it. But from outsiders, it can definitely be a gray area where it's like you have no place to be doing what you're doing, or hanging out with who you're hanging out with, or saying what you're saying. And so that's where it's kind of like it could be a gray area for me, because I'm blind to it, basically. I'm like naive to it. It's just normal to me, but people don't know that. So they could think that I have malintent. And that goes with like Asian too, like with any culture.
Yeah, I do completely agree. And have you ever, ever just like when it comes to a battle, it's and dancing period, and even content creation period, it's all about the timing and the location you do it. And we can easily like try and do something at the worst possible time. I'm like, yeah, no. But when you're trying to call somebody out for a battle in a cipher, you're like, hey, I'm just hopping in the cipher and just following up. But it's like, have you ever felt like a token Asian or a token white girl in a scenario? Because I know for me, it was like weird growing up in Southern Indiana, and a lot of my circles, if outside of the one I had with my cousins, I was for majority of the time the token black guy. And heck, I'll call a spade a spade. I didn't have an African American professor until African American male, maybe African American period, until 8th grade.
Yeah, I definitely was always, I'm always the token white girl, or I'm always the token Asian, depending on my friend group. I was never just me. Actually, that's a lie, because I feel like I I had a unique group of friends, and I didn't realize it until college, when we were no longer like together. But I had a group of friends that were mixed descent. That
Mm.
was really who my friends were. I had my group where I was the token Asian girl, and I had the group where I was the token white girl, and then I had the group that I still, my closest friends to this day are people that are actually mixed cultures. And I always felt like I just don't fit in anywhere, because like no one's half white, half Filipino. Like everybody's Hispanic, or everybody's Middle Eastern, or everybody's something else. And then what it comes down to is like we're all the misfits. Like we're all the ones that that couldn't fit in any one place. We're all ethnically ambiguous. So in that sense, that's how we became so close, because we connected on that. And it's really interesting. And it also makes it harder for us, like I said, to be borderline cultural appropriation, because we do appreciate so many cultures, because within what we grew up with and our friends and even family, like we appreciate so many cultures that sometimes we don't even think about it being cultural appropriation, but to other people it sounds like it.
Yeah, I think it's good to be surrounded by people that you trust and know to point out these things, because we don't know like what we're doing ourselves personally, but it really does hurt and affect everything. But with that being said, man, I know this episode was thick. I know. And
Is it bad if I say thick boy? Like thick, like, see,
you
that could
will
be a
get muted in like 5 seconds for that. But it's one of those topics that we don't really think about, don't really understand unless it happens to us. Like, bro, this is why are you doing this? But we don't understand that we truly do this as well. So I got to think, and all the cultural appropriation, all the microaggressions that someone can easily have or easily like do is like, don't assume and just ask. To close this up, just don't assume and just ask someone, hey, what is this aspect of your culture? I'm really interested. Or what is this style of music? I'm really interested in it. Could you teach me about it? Like, someone
yeah,
could easily teach you and help you understand like what's going on,
yeah,
versus just, oh, I'm going to take it and make a lot of money over it.
right. My favorite experiences is when a friend takes me in and shows me like one of their holiday celebrations or food or something, and actually like shows me, if I was traveling, I wouldn't want to see the touristy stuff. I would want to see the local stuff. And that's the
Agreed.
way I like it with cultures too.
Yeah, and I think that's also like up to us to really research some of that. But with that being said, do we have any idea on what is going to happen next week, or shall we just leave that a surprise for these lovely people?
I think we'll just leave it a surprise.
With that being said, she's Kaehla on Donaze. And until then, next week, TTFN. Bye, guys.
Bye.